Oh, it looks like I'm already live. Cool. Well, I'll wait for a little bit to see who else signs on. I thought it wouldn't pull the trigger until, 5 minutes out. How about, well, I hate to leave anybody hanging. We've got 4 people with us. As you sign in, as you start watching, just go ahead and write something. Let me know that you're with me. And while it's just a few of us, I'll go ahead and click on a couple functions, make sure everything's working for when a couple others sign on. Last week, I had 25 on before I thought it wasn't working and then pulled the plug. So anyway, hopefully this has folks from YouTube and Facebook combined, and it'll be much more conversational than the usual stuff that I do. I've got a couple things I can cover if nobody talks, but I'm kind of looking forward to having people write. I know a couple other people made it a priority to say, hey, all right, I'm going to be with you this week, so hopefully it works out that they can join. If you're, hey, Edward, how you doing? All right, I'm going to see if this chat comes through. Looks like it did. Hold on. It showed up for a second. Hello from Omnia Methodist. Good afternoon, Shiri Anthes. Shiri Anthes. How you doing? Leslie Deblius. Cool. We have 2 people from Facebook. Man, Facebook has not been a cheery platform for me so far. I'm so glad to have Facebook folks. Well, now why isn't that, here, I'm going to get the website for that just one more time and put it in. Let's try this again. It's the exact same thing. All right. I don't know why it wouldn't work. Let's try it again. That's just silly. I don't understand. We got 13 people with us. We got 2 more minutes till I said I'd get started. Y'all, as you're new, go ahead and sign in, and I guess I'm just going to have to read to y'all what everybody's saying since we've got people on 2 different platforms. But you know what? We're very oh, hey, there's a person. Hey, I'm driving home, so I can't chat. Well, Suzanne, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, I knew that whenever I started scheduling this, it would be during people like leaving work and going home. But the thing is, I can't do it any earlier in the day. There's stuff going on, and I don't want to do it later in the day because I want to relax with my family. Hey, John, what is that? Keister. It surely can't be Keister. Surely you're not Keister. Hello from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Hey, man, I love Kentucky. I've only been a couple of times. Brad Klein from Bethlehem Life Church. Where's Bethlehem Life Church, man? Man, this is fun. We got 1 more minute. So if you guys already have thoughts on what you'd like to cover today, go ahead and let those thoughts be percolating. If you have anything that you want to make sure we cover, write it in the comments. I will do like a brief overview of things that I saw. And then if nobody has anything in mind, then I can just do whatever I want. And you guys are along for the ride or not. You can just hang up. Fred from Salisbury, Maryland. Hey, man. And Brad from Dallastown, Pennsylvania. We got a countrywide connection going on right here. I'm sure there's folks from Africa who would like to join, but, this is their sleeping time. I just did an interview with a guy from Kenya. It should be up next week. It had been a while since I did an interview with someone on the African continent. I hope y'all check that out. Fred, you're from Pendel Conference. I don't know a whole lot about that conference. I'm trying to think of who the bishop is. Let's see. Let's look at the Bishop of Pendel Conference. That's not the right thing. Peninsula, Delaware. You guys have lost a quarter of your churches. Luttrell Easterling, of course. Yes, of course. I remember looking at that just briefly. All right, looks like it's 4 o'clock right now. Oh, and it's going to call that chat up every time that I switch. Well, that's fun. Okay. A couple other people got on. Where are the WCAs in the Global Methodist Church or Pennsylvania? Barbara Jean, hi from Ohio. You're also on Facebook. You're double timing it. Good for you for having a good internet connection. All right, I will try and keep track of others who write, but just as a brief orientation, I started this because there are just so many people that have responded well to what I've been doing on PlainSpoken. The way I pitched it in the very beginning was I just really have a heart for conservatives in the United Methodist Church who weren't getting any information, weren't getting good information, didn't know how to make heads or tails of what was going on. So I started this about 9 months ago, and it took a while to take off, but now we're doing pretty well, and I'm very pleased with the level of engagement that we're seeing. Pretty much anything we put out gets with 1,000 views by the end of the day. Some things get more attention than others. The rage stuff, well, I don't do rage stuff, but the stuff that people are angry about gets more attention than others. But, I feel good about the vast majority, well, everything that I've done. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I'm realizing if I want to have like a community gathered around a common goal or purpose, it really shouldn't be my personality so much as like a shared agenda. So, I know that a lot of people are following just because they like that I'm not dramatic or like incendiary, and that I am sometimes okay at explaining complicated things. But I think it's important to say at the outset what my agendas are, and it's not just one, but I'm kind of coalescing around things that I'm going to put in writing. But one is I'm an old school Wesleyan. I think John Wesley and the early Methodists had a lot of things right that we changed, not because they were broken or messed up, but because we break and mess things up that are good. And I think we need to go back to a lot of those things. I care about unity in the church, and so I want to have a voice that like calls people together across denominational lines. I'm not happy with all the splitting. I want a coming together. And then what else do I care about? There were like 3 or 4 things that I was really big on, but of course on the live stream I'm not able to think of it real well. But anyway, if you feel strongly about the things that I have highlighted, whether that be the global nature of the church, of going backwards and reclaiming things, accountability, honesty, transparency. Oh yeah, transparency is a huge thing. That's my agenda all the way. If you care about transparency, I sure hope you're along with me for the ride. Want to acknowledge a couple more people that have come on. Want to say hey to Marianne. Good to see you from Florida, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. Glad to see you. And then Mike. Oh gosh, it's 5 o'clock here. Looks like you've been on. Yeah. Well, hey, I got on a little earlier than I meant to. I'm glad you're here with me, man. Leslie Deblius. Looks like I need to just make this a little bit bigger so I don't have to lean forward. Can I do that? Oh, yeah, I can do that. Well, that's as big as it's going to let me. Baltimore, Washington Conference, Miller's United Methodist Church, litigation. Okay, so I don't know anything about that. Is that a separate thing than the NCLI churches? I want to say there are 30-some, 40-some churches in a collective lawsuit with the National Center for Life and Liberty. Write it in the comments. I'll try and address that here in a bit. Okay, so I wanted to do a brief rundown of how things are going with the PlainSpoken project, and so for that, I'm going to, we got Duncan from North Georgia. Hey, man, I remember your name. You're all right. It's an NCL. Okay, so the lawsuit with Miller's UMC is tied to the NCLL thing. I try and follow this conservative page in Baltimore, Washington, and I try and know all the updates on the NCLL case, and I just haven't seen anything recently on it. I don't even know when the next court date is, and I should know that. So I hopefully I'll remember to check up on that. But if you have an article you want us to read over, go ahead and either email it to me or put it in the comments, and or tell me the name of it, and I'll try and look it up so we can look at it. All right, let's go over to my browser over here, and wanted to let y'all know I started a locals community. If you don't know what this is it's kind of like Patreon, but Patreon has started kind of like cracking down on free speech and stuff. So locals is a way to support people financially that you want to support, but also like the incentive for doing that is that I can post like private content that nobody else gets to see unless they're a subscriber. So if that's something that interests you, it's the web address is plainspoken.locals.com. I've already got 2 people signed on. I haven't posted anything yet, but I'm thinking of doing like a every other day post, just kind of with my life around the church. Kind of you get to see my chickens, maybe my kids and my wife. You get to see TJ and me working in the office. Just talk about things that I'm thinking on and praying about. So if you'd like to support me, I already make a little bit of money from YouTube, and I always want to be above ground with all this. I don't need any more money. The church pays me enough, but the thing is, I'm wanting to make this a full-time thing for TJ so that we can do better research and produce a little bit more content and do things that benefit local churches more. So if that's something that you think I do a good job at, then you might consider joining not Patreon, locals. You can also find other ways to give money, and I'll talk more about that later. But just so you know, I'm not absorbing any money you give into my personal budget. It's all going to go to make greater ministry possible for PlainSpoken. So if you think I do a good job, then you might consider supporting in ways you feel comfortable. So as I said, I'll keep you updated. I started a Twitter. If you're on Twitter, go ahead and find me at PlainSpoken, and you'll see Reconciling Ministries Network is busy. The YouTube channel's doing pretty well. We just got up to, I want to say 2,120 subscribers, and I would feel good about that. But, Good News Magazine is up at 9,000. Seedbed is up at 13. No, they're like 20,000. So I know that there's a greater hunger for authentic Wesleyan doctrinal stuff. So I hope to continue growing the subscriber base and get a lot more people involved. Okay, let's go down the line. Facebook's doing better all the time. And I had a message there. We're up to almost 500 followers. And so I know we've got folks from Facebook with us today. I'm so glad to have you. And then also I have a Substack that you should follow if you like reading stuff. And so I put out something at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, if you like more thoughtful content than me just kind of speaking. So it was from there that I wanted to give props to John Lomperis over at Juicy Ecumenism. He let me do an op-ed. I don't know. He took one of my articles from my Substack and reposted it. And so if you didn't read that, you should. It's great. But I'm not going to read it here because I've already said most of this in some of my Bitter Medicine series. So, all right, I'm going to check the comments now and see if we have people recommending stuff yet. Man, I'm just going to turn that off, and I don't like it coming up and going down. I got to find a way to keep that solid. So let me see. Oh man, that's not working as well as I wanted. So let's see. I got a live chat. Oh, there haven't been a lot of people write things on YouTube. Maybe I should check Facebook, huh? Man, I shouldn't have turned off the chat. I'm always making decisions I regret. Oh, hi from my wife. I guess it's my 11th anniversary today. Sarah Beth and I got married in Little Rock 11 years ago, and that was a good day. God's been very good to me. Are there any WCA jobs or opportunities to help out there? From John Kester. So with the WCA, I don't know that they're hiring. It's pretty basic, pretty bare bones. GMC, if you're asking about the Global Methodist Church, they are, yes, hiring. And even though there's more clergy than there are churches, I want to say, according to this recent Keith Boyette article, there are 3,400 clergy, 3,100 churches. There are churches all over the place that need new appointments. There are churches that their pastors are staying with the UMC as they disaffiliate, and they're looking for somebody good. What I would say is, in any provisional conference you're in, there is a liaison, a point person for figuring out appointments. So there are a lot of churches kind of going out on their own, trying to find their own person. That just kind of gums up the works. You really want to figure out who the contact person in your GMC area is to get on the roster, cross all the T's, dot all the I's to make sure you're in good shape. Hey, thanks for the happy anniversary, James. I appreciate it. I have a happy marriage. Someday my wife and I are thinking about having a whole channel dedicated to Christian marriage and just kind of teaching people good communication in the midst of conflict. We feel like we're pretty good at it, not to tempt anything bad happening. But anyway, marriage is a blessed thing. We've had 11 great years together, 4 kids, and 18 chickens so far, 2 dogs. It's been a happy thing. What does culturally relevant evangelism mean in the GMC? Yeah, that's a good question, John. Hey, Leslie, I'm sorry the volume's low. That just has to do with different phones and carriers. We've looked into that, so sorry. Turn the volume all the way up as you can. I'll move the microphone just a little bit closer, but well, let me see if I can pump up the decibel level just a little bit for you. I'm going to put it up 2 decibels. I don't want it to be too high. But, hey, yeah, it's going into the yellow a little bit more. Sorry. Thanks, Leslie. All right, so John, culturally relevant evangelism. The reason you're asking about that is because I assume of this most recent video that I did, Reflections on the Growth of the Global Methodist Church, and you can't see that because I don't have that up. All right, yeah, here, this one, if you go watch it, I review an article written by Keith Boyette where they talk about, I want to say, 7 key factors in the kind of culture that we want to have in the Global Methodist Church. One is, what did we, I got too many things between here. Culturally relevant evangelism. Yeah, the relevance piece, that's what I picked on. Like, that's a real problematic thing. I had more response to this in the first 4 hours than I've had on most videos. A lot of people saying, yeah, I saw that too. I'm concerned about that. And I honestly do not know. I don't know what it means. I'm anxious about it. It could be that it just means like, hey, maybe your pastor can start a live stream. I actually don't recommend that. It's a ton of work. Unless you're going to put it like to this degree, it's really not worth it. But, there is a heritage and a legacy within Wesleyanism of, you remember John Wesley becoming more vile, doing the field preaching to take the gospel out to the working class that was not coming into the churches. That's pretty fundamental to what Wesleyanism is. So if I'm using a gracious lens, then being culturally relevant, adopting the modes of information, dispensation of the day makes sense. So I get concerned whenever it gets to the point of like Life Church. If you don't know what that is, it's a multi-campus, large mega church that's common. It got started in Oklahoma by a guy who left the United Methodist Church. But one of their slogans is that they will do anything short of sin to bring people to Christ. And I think that really is not a good posture for the church to have. I think we have to be much more concerned with purity than we do with skirting that line with sin. If we're just coming as close up against sin as we can without crossing that line, I think that's a bad place to be. And I think that is where culturally relevant evangelism often goes. So that's my concern going forward. I did want to highlight while we were together, and I meant to call up an article about it, but I want to say North Georgia Annual Conference. I wish I hadn't put it down. One of the new Global Methodist Conferences is meeting right now. And then last week, East Texas Conference in the Global Methodist Church met. And two things that I'm noticing about Global Methodist Church, these gatherings, is everybody who leaves them, man, people are just so happy and excited about it. I'm going to call up my chat here just in case there's more people talking. But also there is no live stream. And from what I can tell, there's no video record of the proceedings other than the ordination service and like some of the worship. So for someone like me who's been talking about the importance of transparency, why is it not seeing that? Well, all right. I'll work out the kinks. Anyway, for someone who cares about transparency, I'm just going, okay, why are these things not live streamed? I want to watch. I want to notice the good things. I want to warn against the bad things. I'd like to think that that's a welcome presence in the GMC. I am Global Methodist clergy. I'd like to think that I'll be. Whenever I talk to people, I tell them I'm biased. You know, I'm biased in favor of the bodies I belong to, and so I want to give good coverage to the GMC, but I can't really do that if I can't see much. And I'm particularly interested in knowing how it is that the GMC conducts business and whether or not it's doing a good job, being fair, being good, if people are treating each other well, if there does seem to be much more agreement theologically as they talk through issues. And I think some of what leadership would say is, hey, we're not doing as much as in the UMC. We're not making resolutions. We're not passing legislation or litigation or whatever, but there's still a lot of business being done and there's not going to be agreement. So I want to see that culture as it takes place, and I want to see how much of the business is above ground versus taking place behind closed doors. All right, so sorry, the first message I can see now is Duncan. It may mean giving the Christian answer to the culture, like grace over cancellation and how to protect our institutions from Marxist takeover. Yeah, if you've watched most of my stuff, I grew up kind of scoffing at people concerned about Marxism and just like that could have ever been a threat in America. And then I read Lewis Sinclair's The Jungle, learned that he was an American communist, and actually once upon a time, communism and socialism were a big force in America. And we even still have democratic socialists in the American government today. As I've gotten older, I've learned to take it seriously. And I think a lot of these ideas bled into the culture in the 1960s and has benefited from our cultural amnesia. We've forgotten a lot of these historical events that caused so much tumult and confusion in our country. When you look at liberation theology in the United Methodist Church, but also much more broadly, that was almost directly an extension of communism. And then when you learn about the Frankfurt School in America, and these German thinkers that came over that were postmodern, post-structuralist, they were neo-Marxists, and they retooled Marxism to thrive in America. So I know that sounds crazy to a lot of people who just haven't seen it, but once you learn some of this history, it's hard to unsee. So as Duncan's talking about this culturally relevant evangelism, that's what he's connecting it to. Like grace over cancellation and how to protect our institutions from Marxist takeover. Okay, so he's being optimistic, and I think we should be optimistic about being equipped by the GMC for answering the cultural criticisms of the culture around us and the reservations that they have. So if they're coming to us with neo-Marxist cultural presuppositions, like we're just supposed to agree with that, then I think it really is helpful to equip us to say, actually, we have a different narrative than the world, and here are the points of agreement, and here are the places where we really disagree, and we actually think that the world leads to death and cannot save you, and Jesus alone can, and we would like to tell you more about that. So yes, whatever culturally relevant evangelism we do should directly tie to Jesus and meet the culture where it is, but take them where they need to be, even if that feels or looks like backwards to them. So one of the cultural presuppositions that we're awash in is progressivism, that culture, American religious life, and life more broadly is constantly advancing towards some greater, amazing future, and we are building on top of the heritage and legacy of the past, and we are going towards a bright, shining future. And what the witness of the Bible says is actually, no, we're the same depraved creatures that we've always been, and helpless in our sin until Christ sends his grace to us, his preventing grace, his prevenient grace to wake us up and teach us to mourn our sins. And I can get into all that. But if you can't speak against the culture to begin with, then you can't even do the very foundational, hey, you're born in sin, buddy. You need Jesus. Otherwise, you're lost. Thanks for the congratulations, Marianne. John says, are there any folks looking into legal solutions for trapped United Methodist churches post-2024? The answer to that, from me, is I don't know. So what I assume is churches of a certain income bracket, if they do discern that they want out and the conference refuses to ratify them, as has happened in, say, the case of Jonesboro First, or if they just can't make it out in time and the doors have already closed, or they're just in a hostile conference that never even entertained it, then yeah, they're probably already looking at legal options, litigation. And then state to state, that's just not going to look the same because state law differs very much with ecclesiastical authorities. Some states like Texas defer to the local church generally, whereas other states like Florida or North Carolina seem to defer to the ecclesiastical authority. In Oklahoma, if you don't know, one of the things I was thinking about covering was this article. Let's see. I'm going to pull up my reading thing and then go to this article from News. Judge orders Oklahoma to redo special session. And that was published just today. I haven't read it yet, and I don't know how good a job she did. So I was thinking about reading over that because in Oklahoma, we generally in the state defer to the ecclesiastical authority, but a state judge just got involved and is actually ruling against the annual conference. I had a lawyer called me who actually knows what they're talking about with a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to say his name because I'm about to do an interview with him, hopefully, and we'll talk about it there, but it's not a done deal. But he said that states will only interfere in the conduct of an ecclesiastical authority. I think it's called the ecclesiastical extension doctrine. Anyway, they will only intervene if an annual conference is guilty of fraud, if they have committed fraud. And I said, well, she intervened, this judge, Judge Timmons, but the word fraud isn't in any of her decision. And he said, fraud can be accomplished without using the word fraud. A lot of times they'll try and save face for an institution as they rule against them. But essentially what I think happened in Oklahoma is that our state judge ruled that the conference was guilty of fraud, which of course is dishonest representation of facts or conditions in order to gain financially, or in the case of Oklahoma, from gaining the building of First United Methodist Church in Oklahoma City. So it's if you haven't followed my reporting on this, I recorded a piece a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, but this judge got involved and said, you have to hold a special annual conference for them. You have to honor the straw poll that they took. It's a big mess. So we're getting together a week from tomorrow. I'll have a lot more to say about it next Friday. But we'll see how litigation works in that setting. So I and others are hopeful about the cause of getting the church free and helping the annual conference conduct itself well. But I just saw today that the BUMC campaign has some slick marketing to say this is about whether or not we can exercise our own freedom, and the state's trying to get involved. And it's always funny when these things kind of like invert, and all of a sudden the liberals are the ones not liking state intervention, and then other times they're saying, hey, we think the state should intervene. And a lot of that's normal and natural. We want big powers to intervene when it benefits us. And so the thing I'm warning against right now is, hey, this looks great for my side's cause right now, but I'm always worried about the downstream consequences if we invite the state in and give them authority they didn't have before. If you're on Facebook, I sure am sorry. I'm not checking that. Well, let me try and. Okay, no, it has populated, I think. Oh, but it only shows the most recent. Okay. Okay, there's only a couple others that have come in. Mike and Marianne, 50 years married for my husband and me, and we're still learning. Well, isn't it fun? You change and your spouse changes, and it's just nuts. And you have some control over that, some influence over that, and then life changes. And man, marriage is just a wonderful, worthy challenge. Duncan commented again. A few churches in North Georgia have successfully sued using the state RICO statutes. Yeah, dude, I don't know enough about that. I knew that there had been some success in North Georgia where the state judge got involved and said you have to give them the right they have through paragraph 2553. You can't have this prolonged, what did they call it? Putting things on hold, suspension, I don't know. You can't do that. You have to let them go through that. So I could benefit from checking in on that and seeing how it's going in North Georgia, how many they have in the pipeline to disaffiliate. I imagine it's quite a mess over there, but I could be wrong. All right. Any other? Yeah, let's go ahead and look at this Oklahoma article. Well, no, let me show you the options of what we have to look at, and then we can kind of like vote and decide what we want to do with the 30 minutes we have left. So I'll switch back over here. So we had the Oklahoma lawsuit. I'm gonna check just real quick and make sure you be looking at your resources. I'm gonna check and make sure that I didn't get anything from News today in my inbox. I wonder if they saw that I did my live stream and stopped sending it to me. Nope, I have it there. Okay. So I don't have anything from Good News. So we have the Good News article from last week that we could do, what the regionalization agenda tells us about the future of the UMC part 1. So I guess we're waiting on part 2. And then I'm going to bring up this News. View this email as a web page and drag it up here. Look at me, tech savvy. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so they feature, I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right screen here. So they feature, that's Judge orders Oklahoma to redo special session. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so that y'all can read it better. And then other headlines, UMCOR aids flood-ravaged Nigeria. Poetic journey to healing. That's not up my alley. I'm a prosaic fella. United Methodist Form Group in Texas Town. It's a new faith community. I wonder if this is about a lighthouse community. Climate change conference urges action. Okay. Throw colonialist approach away. The colonization-style approach to attracting indigenous people to Methodism needs to be mothballed, says the Reverend Calvin Hill. That sounds like, okay, if you want to get mad with me, you can recommend that one. Festival of Wisdom and Grace set in August. Have some events coming up. Blessing Rural Kids and Butterflies. If you want to see me roll my eyes a lot, ask to do that one. Efforts for regionalization move forward. That one will make me angry as well. Church honors early Congolese evangelist. That would be interesting maybe, but they're not going to tell the story the way I want. New 2023 annual conference report posted. I've already got that link here, and I have not read through the way I want to, but also I don't have all the time in the world. Our Living World, AIR. Commentary, the United Methodists are better together. Like we haven't heard that before. Commentary, looking at autonomy and connection. Okay, so this I think would be making the case for the Christmas Covenant regionalization plan, which is the segregated plan. Register for UMAC 2023 in Charleston. What is Association of Communicators? Okay, so that's interesting. I've also got Chris Ritter's, and this is what I probably should use. His compendium is amazing. He chronicles everything, and he's helped me a lot. He, Reflections on the Growth of the Global Methodist Church. That's my most recent video that I did. Man, I just think Chris Ritter's the best. I need to interview him sometime soon. Let me take a minute and review whatever has been written on. I don't know why it clips in and out like that. That's so irritating. All right, the things that have been written. All right, Duncan says, I'll be happy to update you after. Okay, so you're in North Georgia, I guess? Yeah. Okay, and then Marianne Hunter, the new pastor from our former UMC church, preached, you can't scare people into heaven. You can't threaten people into heaven. You can love people into heaven. I just don't know. I mean, I've heard, that's not the first time I've heard people say things like that. But what I don't understand is how they can say that and they're reading their Bible. So, I mean, like, there's so much in the Bible. I mean, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? So it's just really hard to make the case seriously that you can't scare people. Like, then God is utilizing stupid and futile means to minister to us, which just, the moment you're calling God stupid is the moment you know you're wrong. That's just, that's so silly. You can't take people seriously who say things like that. I'm sorry that there are United Methodist clergy that say, I know we're not comfortable scaring people. If you get the impression that I'm up at the pulpit just preaching hellfire and brimstone, I don't hold a candle to John Wesley or the preachers of the first century and a half of this country. I utilize fear sometimes. What was it? It was fear, and what's the other thing? You can't use fear to do it. You can't threaten them it's the same thing. Yeah. Well, I can't threaten them. I'm not going to do anything to them, but God is, or if you're not comfortable with that language, God is going to let them do that to themselves, and it's going to be bad. So, all right, I'm just going to be curious. I want to read this article on, where was it? Yeah, the Oklahoma piece. Let's see how the author is Heather Hahn. Let's see how she does a good with the Oklahoma perspective. And then I'll try and keep an eye on what other comments are written. Oh, wait, I got some other comments here. Brad Klein says, Jeff, thank you for helping me and others. Oh, and it's a good thing that he distracted me because I'm not on the reading page where you can see it. All right. Brad says, Jeff, thank you for helping me and others in our church get through the disaffiliation process. You definitely make a critical difference. Well, thanks, Brad. That's exactly what I'm going for, and I'm so glad you feel that way. And then Duncan says, Stephen King has nothing on Revelation, and he's referring to the stadias of blood or the witnesses spewing molten fire out of their mouth, or heck, any number of things in Revelation. It tells us what's coming, the coming tribulation, the coming judgment. It is quite disingenuous to be a preacher and not talk about those things. So y'all ever hear about Thomas Jefferson, and as a good Enlightenment thinker, a humanist, he went through his Bible and he cut out all the parts that he just couldn't accept as an Enlightenment thinker, and he was gracious enough to let some of it remain, and that's in one way or another the average United Methodist pastor. They've just made it normal to not pay attention to the parts you don't like, and that's a problem. If we believe, it really does come down to, do you think that the Bible is God's word written down by the perfect inspiration of the Holy Spirit, even in imperfect men, but God's perfect word? Or do you believe that it's a fallen product of fallen men that has a glimpse of the divine, which we have to discern? That's the fundamental issue. And there really is no way, people who think that it's a byproduct of man will say, I take it very seriously, but I don't take it literally. And then I think, for me, I'm not afraid of the term literalist. I think it's literally true. I think all of it's literally true and necessary for salvation. And if it's not in there, you literally don't need it for salvation. So I just think we should stop being afraid of those accusations and just say, hey, man, if a preacher is not preaching the whole Bible, if they don't believe that the whole Bible is true, if they just have, Adam Hamilton with his 3 buckets, and he has a bucket where it was true in its time, but not anymore, or it never was true. If they have either of those 2 buckets, I'm sorry, I just can't have fellowship with you. Like, we might agree on some of the finer points, but I'm going to agree with some of the the points with a Muslim. I agree with some things with atheists, but that doesn't make them Christians. It doesn't make them right with God. And this lack of discernment is just silly. John has a good question for Marianne. I know it says Mike, but usually Marianne Hunter is the one commenting, not Mike. All right, let's look at this article, and then I'll talk more to whoever has things to say. A district court judge has ordered the Oklahoma Conference to recreate its April 22nd special session to vote on the withdrawal of a church that filed suit. And that's true. They literally do have to, everyone who's disaffiliated who had a vote can come back. Anyone who's retired or left or, everyone who could vote at the April session can vote now. I've never heard of anything like it. The order essentially requires the United Methodist regional body to hold what would be an illegal meeting under church law, the conference said. The conference appealed the order to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, arguing that the judge's order violates not only the denomination's policies, but also the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Quote, the ruling blatantly interferes with an internal church process protected under the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Oklahoma Conference Bishop Jim Nunn and other conference leaders said in a statement. Yeah, I read that statement. So I would go back to this fraud thing that this lawyer told me about, but also surely they can acknowledge that there should be limitations on this. Like, I don't think anyone wants to make the case that ecclesiastical authorities should just be able to be outright abusive and dishonest and nasty towards the churches under their authority. Like, I think if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be very against that. So I don't even know if they're thinking in those terms anymore, but at least an outside observer looked at the situation and said, hey, this is pretty messed up. Y'all really shouldn't do that. And when their response is, oh, you can't do that, we're legally protected. I mean, that's like, I don't know, that's like my son pushing his little sister down and a stranger saying, hey, you shouldn't treat your sister that way, and him saying, you're not the boss of me. Like, it's a very infantile way to be. There's right and there's wrong, and the fact that the questions are not being asked about right and wrong, but they're just saying, as St. Paul said in his letter to the Corinthians, all things are lawful for me, and he says, but not all things are beneficial. All things are lawful for me, say the Corinthians, but not everything builds up. You need to have this question of what's right and what's wrong, not what can I get away with? What am I within my rights to do? I just think that makes humans Christians very transactional and gross people when we're limiting the conversation to what we have the right to do. And someone might watch that and say, well, he's just saying that because he knows they do have the right to do that. I don't know that because I'm a legal idiot. So, but I'm just speaking on moral terms. If you are representing a Christian body, you should care about right and wrong. And the fact that your language is not around that. Or for them, the right and the wrong is the state should have no authority to mess with us, regardless if we're right or wrong. I mean, I agree obviously, I'm a conservative. I don't think the state should ever be stepping in to church affairs. But I also think it's kind of cockamamie for ecclesiastical authorities to be abusing their own member churches, or for anyone in America to constrain another party to be with them when they don't want to be. Like, on an individual level, that's so clearly wrong. I don't know why on a corporate level it's any different. Anyway, let's get back into the article. The conference... Oh, wait, I already read that one. The ruling... No, I read that one too. All right, I got to scroll down. It represents a threat to all institutions of faith because if this ruling stands, no church or religious body is free from potential interference in its self-government by secular courts. I love that liberal progressives are always talking about how conservatives are guilty of misinformation because they're fear-mongering. I mean, this meets the definition of fear-mongering. As long as they maintain the standard of, I got to look up this term, the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine. That's what it's called. As long as they maintain the standard of ecclesiastical abstention doctrine, that puts a limit on where and when they can interfere. So, as with all American law, sometimes the lines of a given intervention point shift, but to imagine that fraud being established in this case will jeopardize all religious freedom is hyperbolic and not real. So I think what they're trying to do is hype up the whole conference voting body so that they don't care about right and wrong. They're just trying to protect American religious freedom against the state trying to impinge upon its rights. So I should also say I was there for the proceedings of this court case, and the judge was concerned with, she says, what y'all do, your status on gay people is your business. What doctrines you hold is your business. I'm just going to hold you to the commitments that you've made. I'm just going to look at what you've put in writing and see if you held to it or not. And what she determined is, no, you made up a study on the fly that you didn't see through in the timeline that was described. You made up a whole section of paragraph 2553 that is not in the original language. There were several different points that she said this is clearly just disingenuous and should not be honored. So to just say they're taking away our rights is, I don't know, not honest. It's hyperbolic. It's I would say it's dishonest. Even as it appeals, the conference is scrambling to redo its April session at a special session on August 5th at Oklahoma City University's Kirkpatrick Auditorium to comply with the judge's deadline. In an order filed July 25th, Oklahoma County District Court, Judge Alatia Timmons, she was awesome, by the way, sided with FUMC in downtown Oklahoma City and said the conference has until August 6th to hold a vote for church disaffiliation. The Oklahoma Conference already had another special session scheduled in October to take up more church disaffiliation resolutions, but the judge said that would not suffice. Quote, if this court were to simply order that First Church be placed in the process for disaffiliation for possible consideration at the October annual conference, First Church would be deprived of votes by the delegates of the April 22nd special called conference, who have since disaffiliated and are no longer United Methodists, Timmons wrote. And the reason that that's relevant is because they actually filed in time to be considered for that annual conference, but they were held up by the annual conference that did not see the process through prior to that annual conference. That's the part that's left out here, I believe. However, the conference's leaders maintained that non-United Methodists should not have a vote or otherwise participate in any annual conference meetings. A big part of any annual conference is setting the bar, establishing where voting members sit and where others can observe from the sidelines. Quote, the ruling directs the conference to conduct its meetings in a manner that is contrary to the United Methodist Church's governing laws and constitution, the conference said in a FAQ page about the case. I don't think I've read that. So, yes, but it's because the conference didn't honor the spirit, or if you want to argue a little bit, the wording of paragraph 2553. It wasn't obeying its own rules, and it was capriciously, well, no, caprice is not a stand. This lawyer I talked to, he said caprice is not a standard for intervention. It's only fraud that allows for a court to intervene in the case of the ecclesiastical abstention doctrine. So even though there's a lot of screwy stuff that anyway, there's just some hypocrisy here with the conference saying, hey, they're making us do things against our rules. When you're doing things against your rules, do you think they're going to be really happy to see me when I show up to vote a week from now, tomorrow? Let's take a quick timeout and look at this comment from Salty Servant. That is quite a name I might regret. Freedom of association is a very important aspect of the First Amendment, and it's ignored when convenient. I know it's a slightly different context, but it does make me wonder if that matters to them. Okay, that wasn't too salty. Thanks for, salt in the scriptural context is good, so I'm glad you're salty in that way. Yeah, that's a slippery thing. Salty in modern parlance can often mean like bitter and resentful. All right, so Thanks for that comment, Salty Servant. And yeah, you're right. The slippery slope, I don't think slippery slope is a fallacy. I think we see it all the time in the world, and this could be a slippery slope if the integrity of the jurisprudence is not maintained. So that's something that we should all care about and keep an eye on. All right, back to the article. After decades of intensifying debates over LGBTQ inclusion, General Conference, the denomination's top lawmaking assembly passed it. Oh man, it's just going to recapitulate the history. Let's go to the next paragraph. Since 2019, more than 6,000 United Methodist churches, about 20% of the denomination's U.S. congregations, have cleared the necessary hurdles to leave with property under church law. That total includes 84 congregations that the Oklahoma Conference approved for disaffiliation in October last year and April of this year. That's all true. The vast majority of churches leaving the UMC are following the denomination's disaffiliation policy, but some cases are landing in civil courts with unpredictable results. That makes an inference that the church didn't follow the policy. They did follow the policy. I don't know if Heather Hahn knows that. They followed the policy, and the conference just refused to complete the process. They said they were going to someday, but after they kicked the can for 3 months, then they finally filed because they thought the conference was positioning to utilize paragraph 2549, where they just take over the property. That's happened around. Yeah, I've talked about it. The dispute between FUMC, Oklahoma City, and the Oklahoma Conference is a case in point. First United Methodist is among the traditionalist congregations seeking to disaffiliate under paragraph 2553 due to concerns, blah, blah, blah. Among the provisions requirements is that at least 2/3 majority professing members present support disaffiliation at a vote administered by the DS. District superintendents are clergy who serve on a bishop's cabinet. And wow, she really zoomed out there. The Reverend Victor McCullough, the church's district superintendent at the time, scheduled the vote to take place on January 22nd. Ahead of the church meeting in line with disaffiliation procedures, McCullough asked for the church to share its membership roster. That's when the dispute began. That is not true. I don't know why she's saying that. First Church submitted a roster with 487 members listed and some 2,100 members removed by correction in its end-of-year report from December. The conference said that how the church handled this mass removal did not follow the Book of Discipline's process for updating membership rolls. Quote, within the context of the local church conference disaffiliation vote, this raises concerns of potential voter suppression and irregularity in the conduct of the vote. The conference said, ooh, I need to read this FAQ document. Okay, so here's the thing about that. I'll change camera angle to keep this a little bit more interesting. But the thing about that is they didn't talk about the church membership until they had after they had already postponed the vote and they began this church vitality study that they subjected them to. They didn't ask to do it. The conference said, if you want to hold a vote, you have to do this viability study, excuse me. And so they complied with it. And one of the things that they complied with was sending their membership information, which was woefully bloated, as are tons of churches. It had not been maintained well. The pastor at the time did his best to supply an accurate list. The number of names was nowhere close to the number reported in their membership. This is not something that the DS or the conference had ever showed concern about before. It's not something they asked about prior to the vote. It's not why the vote was held off. It's something they only started talking about after things had already gotten hostile. So when they say, yeah, hostilities began, it wasn't the local church getting hostile. It was the annual conference getting hostile and looking for reasons to not allow them to disaffiliate. So what FUMC has going on with its membership roster is not uncommon. It's something that the annual conference had plenty of time to take issue with beforehand. It was only after looking for issues that they said anything about it at all. This is something that, it's not my opinion, this is something that conference leaders on the stand, sworn under oath, testified to, and that the judge called them out on as being disingenuous. So Heather Hahn, I'm sure she's just reporting what she was told. It's not easy to know who to trust, but that factor is not a legitimate factor here. So you can talk about, it's also funny when the roles reverse, all of a sudden liberals are concerned about voter Oh no, voter suppression is a liberal talking point. So never mind. That was going to be a stupid thing to say. First Church submitted a roster with 487 members listed and some 2,100 members removed by correction in its end-of-year report from December. Oops, I forgot to turn back to the reading page. So here's where we are. At the top, the conference said that how the church handled this mass removal did not follow the Book of Discipline's process for updating membership roles. Well, so the membership described, I followed, I did an audit whenever I got here. When you simply cannot substantiate names, you have no other recourse but to, I mean, you have the statistical tables that you submit every year, and it has a portion right there that says removed by correction. So I don't know how they can say it's not a proper way of doing things whenever our own forms allow for it. Not that this issue turns on it, but it just seems like it's a disingenuous thing to say. The pastor did his best. It wasn't good enough. He can't go back in time and get information. He just had to work with the information he had. It wasn't sufficient. Does that mean that because a church doesn't have sufficient information that disaffiliation just is not an option for them? Give me a break. Within the context of the local church conference disaffiliation vote, I did read that. Okay, the conference added it had raised concerns about First Church's handling of its membership rolls multiple times in previous months. The big drop in membership raised other alarm bells, too. The DS notified the church that he was postponing the church vote until after the completion of a viability study of the church under the Disciplines Paragraph 2013, a process for assessing a local church's potential. Process that they didn't have written out yet. They were drafting it at the time. They made up the whole process so that they could run this church through it. They hadn't done it before this point. And yeah, I already corrected the timeline. Let me see if anybody's written anything. Yeah, some nice comments. Thank you. All right, the church balked at the delay and went ahead with the disaffiliation vote on February 5th without a district superintendent present. The vote tally included 16 votes by email, which also is not in line. You know what? This is getting nerdy. It's just all details, and I feel like I've already poked enough holes in it. You know, I'm not going to be mean to Heather Hahn. Reporting on things that you're not there on the ground for is hard, but the timeline is wrong. A judge concluded that there were principles of fraud involved, even though she didn't use the word fraud. The vote next Saturday is well worth it, so I'm going to be there to do it. We have 10 minutes left. I'd kind of like to look around at a little bit more of what's going on. Oh, and I meant to bring up, I know what I want to do. I want to look up this statement put out by Dottie Escobedo. I don't know if y'all saw this. Listen, Bishop Escobedo. Oh, how do I spell that? I'll do Western bishops ask for transparency in Minerva case. Let's see if it gives it to me. I think so. Our request for transparency as we approach jurisdictional trial. Okay, yeah, this is it. Because I've been reporting on the trial of Bishop Carcano for some bit, and let me say outright, I was wrong. I thought that they were going to run out the time on this. They've already put off her trial so much longer than they were within their rights to do. I thought they were just going to wait to let her retire and let her go and keep this all under wraps, and I was wrong. They're going to have the case, and the two newbie bishops over there are going to ask for transparency. Spoiler alert, here's a letter. Dear United Methodist siblings in Christ, as previously announced, a jurisdictional trial is scheduled to occur in August 21st to 25th to adjudicate complaints received regarding the respondent Bishop Minerva Carcano. Recognizing the growing interest and speculation about this matter, we wanted to briefly address the competing values of confidentiality and transparency and share a related request that we have submitted to the presiding officer, Bishop Alfred Gwynn. I know nothing about him. Confidentiality is intended during a complaint process, paragraph 413, in the United Methodist Church to protect both complainants and the respondent. It makes a space for just resolutions when possible, and by requiring confidentiality, aspires to safeguard the livelihood and reputations of those accused. It is not meant to conceal or hide, but to protect. That's a distinction without a difference. No process is perfect, especially when people participate in it. We continue to ask that you pray for the complainants, for Bishop Carcano, and for all who support them through this, including the mediators and the trial court. Let me tell you a little piece of insider information. I contacted one of the complainants. I found out who they were, asked them if they'd talk to me, and they said no. And I thought that was interesting. Because, I mean, it can mean different things. It can mean the complainant was sure that justice would be done. And, I guess I haven't digested these thoughts well enough. But one of the things that, if you followed the Drew Enns case, we had a case in our own annual conference where a friendly person made the complaint so that a just resolution could be easily found, and the person wouldn't be punished for clear violations of things that are right. You can't help but wonder, when all these things are behind closed doors, how much of it is done in good faith versus how much of it is just using the system for one means or another. It seems clear to me I just have very little faith in the structure of the United Methodist Church actually doing what it was intended to do. I'm sure that people in power have used it to get away. I'm very interested to see what happens with this case. So I probably shouldn't have gone off on that little tributary. Back to the letter. With the trial a month away, we continue to think about transparency and how the church will learn about the charges submitted by the Western Jurisdiction Committee on Investigation, Bishop Carcano's response to them, and the consideration of these things by a jury. Having no interest in concealing facts about the complaints or the related charges beyond preserving hope for a just resolution, we have submitted the following request to Bishop Gwynn. 1, we have requested that the trial be live-streamed pending the consent of the complainants and the respondent. And 2, we have also requested public disclosure of the charges at a time deemed appropriate by Bishop Gwynn and also agreed to by complainants and the respondent. Okay, so live stream and I don't know if it's either or both and, request public disclosure of the charges. For a couple of years, we haven't known what she's even charged with. So that just results in suspicion and conjecture, and that's not good. All right, we have 31 people on YouTube. I have no idea how many we have on Facebook, but I appreciate y'all bearing with me as we make it through this stuff. Barbara Jean Betts says, a long time ago, for the church to remove inactive members, TB. Or 2, maybe. I don't know what she was going for, but yeah, she was talking about the Oklahoma case. Hello, watching with interest from London in the UK. Hey, hello, Governor. Good to see you. Man, that's so annoying when Americans do that. I'm sorry, man. Well, glad to have you with us. Let's finish this letter. We have submitted these requests, understanding the unprecedented nature of this situation. To our knowledge, the church has never held a trial for a bishop, and where a trial typically allows for members, colleagues, and other interested parties to be present with reasonable travel, such is not the case for a bishop. When we elect bishops in the UMC, they are not elected as the bishop of a conference or even of a jurisdiction, but of the whole church. Most bishops, like Bishop Carcano, serve in various roles on numerous jurisdictional and general church committees, boards, and agencies, in addition to their assignments to episcopal areas. So they're saying this really is an exceptional situation. There have only been a few times that bishops were brought up on charges in the United Methodist Church. Back to the letter. Please note that we are only announcing that we have made these requests and hope they will be agreed to for the good of the church. That said, decisions about these matters are no longer in our hands, and we trust them to Bishop Gwynn. As a presiding officer, decisions about the trial are properly before him, and we have no authority regarding how and when things move forward except for an agreement on a just resolution if that were to occur. To close, we offer a pastoral word and a prayer. Before we even knew it, we were the recipients of God's good grace. As the United Methodist Church, as Methodists, we believe that when we accept that grace and allow it to permeate all that we do, we can draw even closer to the image of God. All of us are so in need of grace to offer it and to receive it, and we ask of this for all involved as we move closer to this trial. May we find ways to treat each other as Christ would, struggling always to see that image of God present in everyone and moving on to the grace upon grace in our words, actions, and hopes. May God bring us justice, resolution, healing, and hope. Grace and paz. Paz, that's peace. From Bishop Dottie Escobedo Frank. Sorry if I said it wrong. And Bishop Carlo A. Rapinut. Sorry if I said that wrong. These are two newly elected bishops, and this is kind of a bold action. I hope it's received well. I wonder how it is going to be received. There are a lot that would say maybe that they're speaking out of place. But I think this is all in good taste and makes a lot of sense. There's already been so much conjecture and suspicion. You want to put that to bed, let everybody see it, and they might gossip about it. They might talk about it, but at least people will know truth from fiction as it's reported on. So, I'm one of these that thinks it's really great that we see these proceedings on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I like to see how the sausage gets made. I think it often shows that the people mediating this information to us are not as smart as they seem to be and get some basic things wrong that matter sometimes. And so I think in the case of Bishop Carcano, something has stunk for a long time. People around the case, there have been people call me, reach out to me that are very concerned, that are close to it. So I think it'll be great to have it out in the open. I think it'll be scandalous at this point when I think it was General Commission on Race and Religion. I think they're the ones who put out that statement before saying we need this show to get on the road. We need to see what's going on. And then to have these two bishops also say transparency is in good order. It'll be really quite a thing if Gwen says no can do. So let me look at my live stream, the comments one more time. Oh, I needed to correct one more thing I misstated, and I still haven't done the reading, but I trust the commenter. I did, I guess it was in the video that came out today on the GMC. I was talking about whether or not it's the second or third largest Wesleyan denomination. I said the Nazarenes might be bigger than the United Methodist Church now. And the person who commented was like, no, you're mistaken. He was actually nice about it. The numbers he gave were significantly less than the United Methodist Church. So anyway, if you, I said I need to learn not to open my mouth when I'm not 100% sure. 95% of the time I'm right, but that 5% still exists. So I got to correct that. All right, so Barbara Jean says the names of those being removed had to be read at charge conference for 3 consecutive years before removal was complete. Sorry, I posted incomplete message. Okay, yeah, you're right. With the Book of Discipline, it is stipulated that when you have those names, you have to read them out. The problem with Oklahoma City First was they didn't even have the names. So it's not like he took names out of the roster and said they left. Rather, they didn't even have the roster as I understood it. They might have had some digital records, but for some reason were unable to access them. There still seemed to be confusion about that around the court case that they apparently got clear on the second Friday, which I wasn't there for, but the judge spoke to it and found that it was common and not done in bad practice. So let me see if we got anything from Facebook. Suzanne said, I watched the East Texas ordination service. What's the difference in being a deacon and elder versus just a deacon or an elder? Okay, so this is something that I didn't even understand until I went through it. That, back before the current ordination set up in the United Methodist Church, the process my grandfather went through was you became a deacon first and then an elder. So you couldn't become an elder without becoming a deacon first. A deacon is an intermediary position, so to speak. And what happened in the United Methodist Church is they said, hey, we're not lesser than, we're equal to. And so they created 2 different orders entirely where there's not a notion of one being a stage on the way to another one. And the GMC seems to have, I'm sure it's not a one-to-one correspondence, but the notion is, again, you got to be ordained a deacon before you're ordained an elder. So whenever I was ordained a few months ago, I was ordained as a deacon first and then immediately ordained as an elder. So, but some people don't want to be an elder. They just want to serve in the capacity of a deacon, in which case they're just ordained as a deacon and you leave good enough alone. So that's what they've done there. Bonnie Belmer says, watching in Ohio and glad to learn about our new GMC and how folks are doing. I'm glad you're enjoying it. As always, the coverage I do is going to be very insufficient, not nearly good enough. Oh, we got another one from Robert Wilson. It's from the Anglican tradition, what Wesley would have gone through. In the Anglican Episcopal tradition, one spends at least 6 months to a year as a deacon before receiving elder's orders. Well, I'm glad to know that, Robert. Thank you for that. Well, we screwed it up because I was a deacon for more like 6 seconds, not 6 months. But even so, admittedly, we have to start these things off that way. I wonder, I need to look at that section of the Book of Doctrines and Discipline. That's not the full title, but how it is that the ideal situation will work when everything is firmly instantiated. All right. Well, I always intend to try and keep these things to an hour, and that means I'm always going to go over a little bit. But if you guys ever have things that you want to make sure I cover on the live stream, I want to do this every Friday just to get everybody together and encourage one another and kind of get on the same page about what we're fighting for, what we're praying towards. So, one thing, if I'm going to be a religious leader, I might as well tell you to pray. I would ask you to pray about the Oklahoma Annual Conference. I think a lot of people are gearing up for a very nasty time together a week from tomorrow whenever we gather in Oklahoma City. I'm anxious about being there because I've spoken pretty openly about my thoughts and feelings about the conference, and I'm sure I'll be persona non grata. So yeah, I would ask your prayers for me and that everything goes smoothly and that people don't behave badly. That would be great. I think they're stacking the deck for things to go badly, so I'd pray for hearts of peace to prevail. Our British friend says in the MCGB UK, there are now 2 orders, quite distinct: presbyters and deacons. Presbyteros is the elder and diakonos is deacons. So presbyters are elders. Is there anything else I should ask y'all to pray for? Barbara Jean says now they're called PT. Interesting. Oh, am I still on the small view? No, I'm just behind. I can't really think of anything to ask y'all, and I think I've issued all of my corrections that I had in mind. I should go ahead and tease 2 videos. One is going to come out tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. It's me and TJ talking through a video of a lady pastor in Alabama, northern Alabama, who allowed her church to revise the Lord's Prayer. And apparently that got circulated and caused a kerfuffle. And so she explained her reasoning there, which we kind of, it's like a 6-minute clip, and we go through it and we talk through all the theology involved. I think is a really interesting piece, so I'd encourage you to watch it. And then I have an interview with an African friend from Kenya named Boniface Molki, I think is how he pronounced it. And that should come out on Monday, I think. So stay tuned. If there are any things that you think I should report on, then what's really helpful for me, email me at plainspokenpod@gmail.com and tell me not just what the general topic is, but if you could send me links to any articles or videos about it, if you could give me your own analysis of things that you noticed, that's all very helpful to me because I will remind you, I am a full-time pastor of 2 churches. I have a family with 4 children, 7 and younger, and a wife that I would like to treat right. It's our 11th anniversary today. I'm going to go hang out with her the rest of the evening. So, just do what you can to make things easy on me, and I'm going to do my best to spread accurate, helpful information. And then together, I think we're already doing great stuff, and we'll continue to do great stuff. But let's let the Friday thing, I'm going to give this a good trial. We're going to do this like 6 weeks at least, and hopefully it'll look and sound better each time and work a little bit better each time, and then we can just see if maybe we can get some balls rolling and accomplish something good with all these people who are kind of on the same page. Maybe that's too ambitious. I don't know. I as my 3rd grade teacher's poster said, you shoot for the moon and you land among the stars, right? All right, Suzanne, thanks for your kind words. And Barbara, Barbara Jane, I totally understand. All right, how about this? This is not a church. This is not a replacement for a church. I don't want to confuse anybody. If you're not in a local church, please engage in a local church. But I want to close with a prayer, and then we'll move on with our lives. Lord, I thank you for who you are. You're a good God. You've seen so many United Methodists through a terrible time of confusion and despair. You've allowed the formation of a new group with a lot of hope, and we pray blessing upon the Global Methodist Church as it strives to fulfill the legacy of your Son, Jesus Christ, and the people called Methodist. We ask, Father, that you would bless the United Methodist Church, give them hearts of peace, remind them of what peacemaking and grace look like so that they are not coercing churches to stay that want to leave and engaging in fraud or greed in order to hold on to those things which those communities have built up. We want to ask your blessing upon those who love their churches and want the best for their churches and disagree about what that means. And Father, we selfishly ask that you would help us to be on your side, that you would help us to abandon those things that are not of you, those desires to be unholy as our enemies are unholy, of those desires to defend ourselves and justify ourselves. Help us to seek purity and holiness and righteousness in ways that glorify and please you. Help us to say no to ourselves so that we can say yes to you. And to that end, Lord, build up the people called Methodists that we may please you and honor you in our daily lives. And may the future be a bright place, Father, where we declare war against the gates of hell that will not prevail against your church. Give us that boldness that's required for this present era to do that kind of culturally relevant ministry that is countercultural, and that advances and holds high the banner of your Son, Jesus Christ. We ask these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen. All right, well, this has been fun. I'm glad I didn't screw it up as bad as last week. Next week should be even better. Go ahead and put it on your calendar. Next Friday, 4 o'clock Central Standard Time, or I don't even know what it is in the UK. I'm so glad you joined us in Great Britain. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. This has been really fun, guys. God bless you. I'll see you next week, if not before.